for you are my rock and my redeemer. Well, I'm going to encourage you to grab a sanctuary Bible and just keep it open as we look at the gospel today, because I want you to have in front of you first chapter 9, which is really where this story begins, in chapter 9. And it's there that the long travelogue, the long journey of Jesus begins in Luke's gospel. It's 24 chapters. In chapter 9, verse 51 is the key verse. Then Jesus set his face towards Jerusalem. And thus begins a journey through new towns and new places to the completion of his mission. Last week, we heard how some people who wanted to be disciples and longed to follow Jesus were nevertheless sent home because they weren't willing to make the sacrifices necessary for the trip. Today, our gospel story recalls 70 people who were willing to venture out on a mission for Jesus and to follow some pretty challenging restrictions and guidelines to do that. And what wonderful timing for this story in a lot of ways. But here I see both parents and some of our youth and chaperones who just yesterday returned from venturing out to Taylorsville, North Carolina. That was the mystery location, Taylorsville, North Carolina. And from the picture, that was up in the mountains in western North Carolina. Welcome home. We praise God for all that happened and all that you experienced. We look forward in a couple weeks to you sharing those stories, retelling them to us about what was gained and what was saw. One of our parents posted this yesterday on Facebook. 1 week ago, very early in the morning, yes, it was 5 a.m. Yeah, we gathered here at church. I sent my 2 boys off to be the hands and feet of Jesus in North Carolina. I love that they jumped in with both feet, even without knowing exactly what to expect. Now they are home. And by the chatter in our house, it sounds like a great trip. New friends met, strangers helped. Hearts full. They worked at a kids club, thrift stores, Habitat for Humanity, and senior centers. Thanks everyone for making this possible. Your prayers were felt and appreciated. And like I say, pretty soon our youth and chaperones will share their stories with us. And in their telling, and in the excitement, I know we'll hear how they return, like the disciples, like the 70 in this story today. We hear another message, which is, if you don't venture out, you're going to miss out. If you don't venture out, you're going to miss out. 70 people signed up for a mission with Jesus in our gospel today. They said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And remember, these were not the 12 disciples. And that's what has kind of captured my imagination in hearing this story this time. I feel like they're more relatable, because there's the 12 disciples, and that's kind of a higher echelon of leadership. Those are people being prepared for leadership. They're following Jesus daily. They're being taught by him. He's the rabbi. They're his disciples chosen by him. And yet here are these 70 others going out, and surely they had families that were anxious for them as they went out. They had heard Jesus teach maybe and were inspired by him. Maybe they saw a miracle. Maybe he healed somebody that they knew, a friend, a family member. Maybe he healed them. Somehow, they were ready to sign up, to venture out, each with some story to tell about them knowing Jesus too. each knowing what a difference, the blessings that come when you know the Son of God. Like I say, they were not the 12 disciples, they're the 70. The 12 were being prepared for leadership. I always think of James and John, sons of Zebedee, saying, Jesus, when you come into power and your kingdom is established, we're going to sit on your right and left hand. I heard that, man. She goes, yeah. I want you to know that this number 70 is something to pay attention to today. Not just because it's relatable to us, but there's a biblical significance to Genesis, the first book of the Bible, includes something called the Table of Nations. And it's sort of a genealogy of the origins of all the nations and people of the earth. So 70 becomes this number, kind of a symbolic number, that would suggest the carrying of the gospel now to the whole world, for all the peoples. You see? 70. So Jesus has turned his face to Jerusalem. At this point, he's performed many miracles and taught within a kind of a triangle of cities: Capernaum, Bethsaida, Chorazin. And now he's heading to new towns where there are both Jews and Gentiles. This is Galilee, after all, of which the prophet Isaiah spoke. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled, but there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles will be filled with glory. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Those who live in a dark land, the light will shine on them. Jesus sent out an adventurous 70 ahead of him to announce his coming. He sent them in pairs with some instructions that are a bit mysterious to us today, but we can get the gist of these, so let's run through them quickly. First of all, there's good news. The harvest is plentiful. That means there's lots of people that need to hear the gospel. Lots of people who need to hear a word, peace be with you. He sends them out by twos. He wants them to be safe and supported. It talks about sending you like lambs into wolves, but the real danger here is not that they'll be eaten alive, but rather the rejection that they would feel, and then the ensuing discouragement. And so when you're together in two, you can encourage each other more. Jesus prepares them for that. Talk to no one on the way. As Minnesotans, we get this because we know about the long Minnesota goodbye, right? It can be an elaborate process if you stop and start a conversation. And no, Jesus has given them instructions to go to this town, and here's the message. Boom, boom, get there. Stay focused. Take nothing. No purse, no bag, not even sandals. And think about this. They arrive into a town as someone in need, not someone that's superior, or you know what I mean? Look at the posture of this missionary in need of hospitality, needing someone to open their door. Yes, they enter in poverty, but they also know that they bring the greatest gift of priceless value. News of Jesus. News of Jesus. And there's a message there too where Jesus is supporting this work. They deserve to be taken in. They deserve to receive pay, not above anything other than the essentials, but that this is an expectation for those who bring such good news from the Lord. And then finally, he does prepare them for rejection. And honestly, for all of us considering venturing out, this is overwhelming. It's probably the very first thing we think about. We create a huge tower of fear about being rejected. And Jesus says just this. And it's kind of ironic if we think about it, because what's the first best gesture in the ancient world of hospitality. You've been traveling in sandals or barefoot. You need to wash your feet, right? So if they are in a town that has not extended hospitality, they still got dust on their feet, don't they? And Jesus says, well, just shake it off. Don't call down fire from heaven. That was last week. Yeah, just shake off the dust. Don't judge. And be sure, though, that you leave that place still having proclaimed Jesus to them. Mission means taking on risks and rewards, right? Some places will be welcoming, but there's no guarantee. As young people, Jim and I both ventured out in different ways, and this text makes me think about that, and we both would say, if you don't venture out, you miss out. For Jim, I know I've told some of you before about that cross-country bike ride he took with his brothers. And I thought about how it kind of is similar in the way that they sought out hospitality. They ride into a town on their bikes, the entourage, kind of grubby looking. And if there wasn't a city park where they could, camp overnight, they'd go hang out at the grocery store. And inevitably someone would come to them and say, hi, what are you doing here, And they'd engage them in some conversation. And oftentimes people would at least open up their backyard. And even more often, they'd invite them in once they got to know them and feed them dinner and let them clean up and stay overnight. And those are times that are remembered so clearly, even today. And for me, it was spending a year in North Carolina, in what's now the AmeriCorps. So it was a year of service east of Raleigh, North Carolina. And yes, I was there to serve, and it was humble servant work. But what I remember is the hospitality in the homes that I visited, homes that I will tell you were barely homes, that you could look through the open floorboards to see the dirt underneath. And yet, I wept and wept on my last day for what I had received that year, and the hospitality and welcome shown to me. It was reciprocal, and this is reciprocal here. This mission is reciprocal, and if we look, we see it. Jesus says, eat whatever is offered you. Think about that for Jewish disciples. Okay? That's a big thing. Skip the dietary restrictions. Open up. Open up to them. It's reciprocal. It's relational. It's conversational. That's what Jesus was looking to ensure would happen by sending them out as he did. And that's how a door opens, and hospitality is shared, and peace is given, and the gospel told. And here's the real shocker. Look what happened through these 70, not the 12. You might expect some miracles through the 12, right? Look what happened through the 70. They may have only been the 70, but when they returned, Jesus said, yeah, I could see what was happening through your work. I saw Satan take a big fall. Through their actions, even Satan was disempowered. Through their actions. Think about how this peace is needed today. Is there any less needed? Right here in Maplebrook, I remember visiting with someone, and through tears, they cried, I just want peace in my house. Right here. I meet with people for whom Jesus is a distant story, forgotten, rejected. Think of the opportunity we have to walk and bring light into a place of darkness. But if you don't venture out, you'll miss out. You'll miss out in something that's going to bring you right into the heart of the work of Christ. You'll never see beyond your fears. You'll never see beyond your fears. Isn't that sad? The 70 returned so excited that Jesus had to kind of chill them out a little bit. He said, okay. It was great. It is great. But let's go back to the beginning and just rejoice. Like I was telling the kids, that you belong. You belong to God. You're His, and nothing will change that ever. We have a parade coming up. Maple Grove State Parade. Think we can muster 70 people? There's a challenge, people of Maple Grove Lutheran Church. Yeah, it might have seemed like a little group, when you think about, let's see, Rome in the time of Jesus. I looked this up. Population at the time of Caesar Augustus was estimated 1.25 million. We got 70 people going out. But look what happened. And the gospel is proclaimed today. Still, and it needs to be brought to homes that need peace and news of Jesus. And when you think about it, all those New Testament stories are about people like the 70, right? Not so much about the disciples, but about the Gerasene demoniac. The Samaritan woman at the well. These people went back and told their whole village what Jesus had done. We're the other group of people like them. And we know Jesus, and we know peace that we can share, and the news to tell. What would we say in that parade? Please sign up in the ministry notes today. Because if you don't venture out, you're going to miss out. And then think in the next 10 days or so, what are you going to say? What are you going to say to people as you pass out those little seed packets? Come grow with us. Because don't just pass those seed packets out. You got something to say. What is it? It might be, God's peace be with you. It might be, come worship with us. Jesus is so good. Do you know Him? Think of something you want to share. Let's pray. Gracious God, Lord of the harvest, today we have the story about the 70. And you invite us to venture out. So help us, Lord, overcome our fears. There is need. Help us feel it. Help us to be so eager to share the same news that has saved us with others. Open our mouths to speak in the Spirit, your love, and then to marvel at your power at work. Amen.